The Philippine Stock Exchange has risen by double digit is an understatement, and I'm glad to see that we are quite close now to the levels that we had before the financial crisis. Meanwhile, foreign direct investment coming into the Philippines have also posted a double-digit increase. The business expectation survey carried out by our central bank shows that business sentiment continued to improve in the third quarter. The overall confidence index is back to positive territory compared to the third quarter of last year. We will continue to work aggressively to ensure that the growth that has been generating jobs and revenue to invest in new infrastructure and critical social programs will be sustained. We will continue with our economic resiliency program and its key components, not just that fund for infrastructure, public sector fund, but also conditional cash transfers, the comprehensive livelihood and emergency employment program, and the bigger, faster absorption of the budget by our agencies. Through government support at all levels and the hard work of our people, we will not be deterred in our effort to maintain growth. We will intensify our investment in infrastructure, especially post-calamity reconstruction. I think you have seen in the news that I have just created a special national public-private reconstruction commission whose task shall be, first, to undertake a study of the causes, costs, and actions to be taken in the wake of typhoons Ondoy, Pepeng, but not only those two, also last year's Typhoon Frank, from which we have not fully recovered. Second, undertake the rehabilitation plan for wrecked infrastructure and other priorities. 3, raise funds, especially grants, to fund reconstruction. 4th, prioritize programs. 5th, oversee implementation. And 6th, serve as a clearinghouse for international assistance which the donors themselves implement using the cluster approach. This has been used, for instance, in the reconstruction of Typhoon Reming, and we can do the same template for these 3 typhoons. And 7th, coordinate an international pledging session with the World Bank and the United Nations. I'm sure you've also read that the commission shall be headed by a leading businessman with the Department of Finance and a leader of the church as co-chairs. The government members of the Reconstruction Commission will be the user agencies, need agencies, or implementing agencies. For instance, the SWD, HUD-C, and the Office of Civil Defense. But we will also be harnessing private sector, business leaders, NGO leaders, both domestic and international. Harnessing domestic private initiatives into the government's overall reconstruction efforts, including business groups, the institutional church, and civil society organizations, makes for good policy and better mobilization of external and incremental resources. It also allows us to be able to pick the brains or tap the technical expertise and networks of the private sector and NGO leaders. Depending on the recommendation of the Special Commission, we may issue reconstruction bonds. I've already discussed this with Peter Fabila, who supervises the NDC, which seems to be the favorite recommendee of economic managers and business leaders as far as being an issuer of bonds is concerned, whether peso or dollar, to which multilaterals such as the World Bank and the ADB may subscribe to. Why? the NDC? Why a government corporation? Because of the impact of the global crisis on the fiscal capacity of the national government of the Philippines. But even then, we'd rather that the primary response of our administration to the enormous calamities which climate change is bringing to our vulnerable country cannot just be another borrowing program. We don't want to let grant opportunities go to waste. Although lesser in size than loans, they remain substantial. And even if we resort to bonds, in bringing in exogenous resources, we will go beyond a mere borrowing program to provide a development framework that is required by ODA programs. In sum, we will be pushing, first, for more grants or non-repayable inflows. The underlying doctrine is that the Philippines is a victim of climate change, not a culprit. We are not a climate maker, but we certainly are a climate taker. In fact, we can be proud of what we have been doing against climate change, to mitigate climate change, in our initiatives in legislation, as well as in expenditure programs for environmental protection, such as clean water, solid waste, and clean air. We also can be proud of what we are doing on poverty reduction, such as the Pantawid Pamilya Conditional Cash Transfer Program, and on disaster risk reduction, such as the climate bill I am scheduled to sign on the 30th of this month, and also the disaster risk reduction bill, which has passed the Senate, and which I hope the House will pass soon. We will be having a LEDAC meeting on Thursday, so we can discuss legislative response to our calamities. As I said, we are a climate taker, not a climate maker. We are not a culprit in climate change, contributing only less than 1% to global warming. We are a victim. Victims are compensated, not penalized with high interest rates or conditionalities. And that is why we are very grateful to the United Nations for the flash appeal that they have launched to mobilize grants. Second to grants, we will push for concessional loans. For instance, JICA zero interest or 25 basis points yen loan package. But here, we do not forget that we can only spend from loans if there is a budget provided for loan proceeds and not just the local counterpart. If we have a 1 trillion peso budget, for instance, and we have maybe 800 billion pesos in taxes, the 200 will have to come from loans, but they have to be part of the budget, not just the local counterpart, including the loan proceeds. For our local counterpart, we count on Congress for a joint resolution authorizing us to avail of the so-called unprogrammed provision. I believe it has passed the committee level, Nonoy, and is up for plenary discussion. So after, in importance or in priority, after grants and then concessional loans, third, commercial borrowings either through bonds, the one that people, the business community and economic managers are expecting Peter to issue, or other instruments should be the last financing option. As I said, because borrowing with high interest rates or whatever the market will give is the less preferred to grants and concessional loans. I mentioned that one of the mandates of the new commission is to organize an international pledging session. And even before I organized the commission, actually Gary Tevez was already preparing for the annual World Bank-led Philippine Development Forum